It was one of those perfect summer days, the kind where the sky stretches endlessly blue and the air feels electric with possibility. I hadn't planned on attending the annual summer music festival downtown, but my friend Mia had bailed at the last minute, leaving me with an extra ticket and a choice: stay home and binge-watch another series, or venture out alone. Something pulled me toward adventure that day, a whisper of intuition perhaps, urging me to put on my favorite blue button-down shirt and head into the crowded city center. The festival had transformed our usually mundane downtown area into a vibrant celebration of music, food, and community. Colorful banners stretched between buildings, food trucks lined the perimeter emitting mouth-watering aromas, and the distant thrum of bass from the main stage vibrated through the concrete beneath my feet. I found myself in the notoriously long line for Rosie's Gourmet Ice Cream, a local legend that only appeared at special events, with flavors worth waiting an hour for. I'd been single for 8 months following a relationship that had fizzled out rather than dramatically exploded. Dating apps had left me disillusioned, and I'd reached that comfortable yet slightly melancholic state of being content with my own company while still feeling the occasional pang of loneliness. I wasn't looking for anyone that day. Isn't that always when the universe decides to intervene? The line snaked around the corner, and I had been scrolling mindlessly through social media for about 15 minutes when I felt a light tap on my shoulder. When I turned around, I found myself looking into the warmest hazel eyes I'd ever seen. They belonged to a man about my height with tousled dark hair and a smile that seemed to transform his entire face. He wore a vintage band t-shirt that hugged his athletic frame just right, and there was something immediately disarming about the way he looked at me, as if we were already sharing an inside joke. "Hey there," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent I couldn't immediately place. "This is going to sound weird, but I've been in this line for 30 minutes, and I just spotted my friend who has our concert wristbands at the entrance. Would you mind holding my spot for a few minutes? I promise I'll be quick." There was something in his expression, earnest yet playful, that made saying no impossible. "Sure," I replied, trying to sound casual despite the immediate flutter in my stomach. "But if you're not back in 5 minutes, I'm claiming your ice cream choice as payment." He laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to ripple through the air between us. "Deal. What flavor would you claim?" "Lavender honey," I answered without hesitation. "Bold choice." "I'm more of a salted caramel guy myself," he said with a wink. "I'm Elliot, by the way." "Daniel," I offered, extending my hand, which he shook with a grip that lingered just long enough to feel intentional. 5 minutes, Daniel. Start the clock." And with that, he slipped away through the crowd, leaving me with a strange mixture of skepticism and hope. Would he actually return? Or was this some elaborate scheme to cut in line later? The festival atmosphere around me seemed to intensify as I waited. The sun cast golden light across the crowd, transforming ordinary people into glowing silhouettes. Children darted between adults with painted faces, couples swayed to distant music, and the collective energy of thousands of people enjoying themselves created a palpable buzz. I found myself noticing details I might have otherwise missed: the intricate henna tattoo on the woman ahead of me, the synchronized dance of the ice cream vendors as they scooped and served, the way laughter seemed to rise above the general din in distinct, joyful bursts. My thoughts kept drifting back to Elliot. There had been something magnetic about him, something that made me hope he wasn't just another attractive stranger passing briefly through my life. I checked my watch. 3 minutes had passed. The line had moved forward considerably, and I was now only about 10 people away from the front. A couple behind me started chatting, asking if I was saving a spot for someone. "Yeah, just a friend who had to grab something quickly," I explained, feeling strangely protective of Elliot's spot though I barely knew him. Was I being naive? Perhaps. But there was something refreshing about extending trust to a stranger in a world where we're constantly told to be guarded. For minutes now, I was rehearsing what I'd say if he didn't return, something witty about enjoying my double scoop, when I felt a presence beside me. But it wasn't Elliot. It was a festival staff member with a clipboard, asking people about their experience so far. "Enjoying the festival?" she asked brightly. "Definitely," I replied, my eyes still scanning the crowd for a glimpse of that vintage t-shirt. "It's my first time attending." "First-timer. We love that. Make sure you check out the acoustic stage by the river. It's a hidden gem." As she moved on to the next person, I checked my watch again. 5 minutes had passed. I felt a small but distinct pang of disappointment settle in my chest. The line moved forward again, and I was now just 5 people away from ice cream glory. I sighed, accepting that my brief encounter with the charming stranger was just that, brief. And then, just as I had given up hope, I heard someone calling my name. I turned to see Elliot weaving through the crowd, slightly out of breath, his face flushed with exertion and excitement. But what caught my attention wasn't his return, it was what he was holding. In one hand, he clutched 2 VIP wristbands for the festival, their metallic surface catching the sunlight. "Daniel, sorry that took longer than 5 minutes," he said, sliding back into line beside me. There was a complication with the wristbands, but I sorted it out. He held them up triumphantly. "These are for the premium viewing area. My friend works for the festival sponsor and couldn't make it today. I was going to bring my roommate, but he came down with something this morning." I stared at him, processing what he seemed to be suggesting. Are you asking me to join you?" His confidence seemed to waver slightly, revealing a vulnerability that was incredibly endearing. "Well, yes. Unless you think that's too forward, we could start with ice cream and see how it goes. No pressure." The line moved again, and suddenly we were at the front. The vendor looked at us expectantly. "What can I get you two?" Elliot looked at me, eyebrows raised in question. I made a split-second decision. "1 lavender honey and 1 salted caramel, please. Both in waffle cones," I said, pulling out my wallet. "No way," Elliot protested, already reaching for his own. "I'm paying. It's the least I can do for making you wait. You brought VIP wristbands. I think we're well beyond even," I countered. What followed was a playful argument that ended with us each paying for the other's ice cream, a solution that made the vendor roll her eyes good-naturedly. As we stepped away with our treats, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. We found a small patch of grass under a tree, just far enough from the speakers to allow conversation without shouting. "So, Daniel who likes lavender honey ice cream, tell me something about yourself," Elliot said, settling cross-legged on the grass beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched. "I'm a graphic designer for an environmental nonprofit," I offered. "I spend my days trying to make climate change data look sexy enough for people to pay attention." "That's actually fascinating," he replied, and unlike most people who said those words, he seemed genuinely interested. "Do you think it works? Making data visually appealing to change minds?" This launched us into a conversation that flowed effortlessly from climate activism to design principles to our shared love of obscure indie bands. I learned that Elliot was a physical therapist who specialized in helping performing artists recover from injuries, that he had moved to the city 3 years ago from Montreal, explaining the slight accent, and that he had a rescue dog named Pixel who had 1 blue eye and 1 brown. Time seemed to slip away as we talked. Our ice cream cones were long gone, and the afternoon sun had begun its descent, casting longer shadows across the festival grounds. We'd been sitting in the same spot for nearly 2 hours, oblivious to the performances we were missing, when Elliot suddenly jumped up. "We should use these," he said, holding up the wristbands. "The headliner starts in 30 minutes, and these will get us right up front." He extended his hand to help me up, and when our palms met, I felt a current of electricity that had nothing to do with the festival's sound system. As I stood, we ended up closer than I had anticipated, our faces just inches apart. For a moment, we both froze, caught in a bubble of possibility. What happened next still plays in my mind like a scene from a film. Elliot's eyes dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes, a silent question forming between us. And then, with a gentleness that contrasted with the pulsing energy around us, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to mine. The kiss was brief, a soft, warm pressure that ended almost as soon as it began, but it left me breathless. "I've been wanting to do that since I saw you in line," he confessed, his voice slightly husky. "Was that okay?" In answer, I closed the distance between us again, this time deepening the kiss, my hand finding the nape of his neck. I could taste the faint sweetness of caramel on his lips, feel the smile forming as we kissed. When we finally pulled apart, the world around us seemed to have recalibrated. Colors more vibrant, sounds more distinct, possibilities more abundant. "Definitely okay," I finally answered, unable to stop the grin spreading across my face. We made our way to the main stage, hands intertwined, navigating through the dense crowd with a newfound purpose. The VIP section was everything promised, close enough to see the expressions on the performers' faces, with enough space to dance without being crushed. As the headliner took the stage and the first notes reverberated through the crowd, Elliot stood behind me, his arms wrapped around my waist, his chin resting lightly on my shoulder. "Thank you for holding my place in line," he whispered into my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "Thank you for coming back," I replied, leaning into his embrace. The concert was extraordinary, a perfect blend of familiar hits and new material that had the crowd alternately singing along and listening in reverent silence. But what made it magical wasn't just the music. It was experiencing it while wrapped in the arms of someone who, hours earlier, had been a complete stranger. There's something profoundly intimate about sharing music with someone, feeling their body respond to the same rhythms, watching their face light up at the same lyrics. During a particularly moving ballad, Elliot turned me around to face him, and we swayed together, foreheads touching, creating our own private moment within the collective experience. "I don't normally do this," he said softly, his eyes searching mine. "Kiss strangers at music festivals?" I teased. "Find someone I connect with so quickly," he clarified, his expression turning serious. "This feels different." I knew exactly what he meant. In a world of curated online profiles and calculated text messages, there was something refreshingly authentic about our meeting. No algorithms had matched us. No mutual friends had vetted us for each other. Just pure chance and a willingness to take a small risk. As the concert ended and the crowd began to disperse, we lingered, neither of us ready for the evening to end. We wandered through the festival grounds, stopping to listen to a jazz quartet playing on a smaller stage, sharing a plate of gourmet street tacos, and talking endlessly. I learned about his childhood in Quebec, his passion for rock climbing, his dream of starting a wellness center for artists. I told him about my collection of vintage cameras, my weekly game nights with friends, my desire to create a graphic novel someday. The festival was winding down, vendors packing up their stalls, cleaning crews beginning their work, when we finally acknowledged that the night was coming to an end. We stood at the exit, that awkward moment of departure looming between us. "Can I see you again?" Elliot asked, taking both my hands in his. "Maybe somewhere quieter, where we can actually hear each other without shouting?" "I'd like that," I replied, feeling a flutter of anticipation at the thought of seeing him in a different context. "I know a great little bookstore cafe that has live poetry readings on Thursdays." "Poetry readings?" He raised an eyebrow. "You're full of surprises, Daniel." We exchanged phone numbers, and as he entered his information into my phone, I took a moment to really look at him. The way his hair fell across his forehead, the slight crinkles around his eyes when he smiled, the careful way he handled my phone as if it were precious. It struck me then how extraordinary it was to feel such a connection with someone I'd just met. "There," he said, handing back my phone. "Now you can't claim you lost my number when you don't call." "Who says I'm going to be the one to call?" I challenged, enjoying the easy banter we'd established. "Fair point. Race you to it." His smile was infectious. Our goodbye was a lingering kiss that held the promise of more to come. As I watched him walk away, turning once to wave before disappearing around a corner, I felt a sense of wonder at how differently my day had turned out than planned. I had come alone to a festival I nearly skipped, only to leave with my heart racing and my phone containing the number of someone who felt important in a way I couldn't yet articulate. The next morning, I woke to a text message that had arrived at 7:03 a.m. "I win the race. Coffee today? There's a place near my clinic that makes lavender honey lattes." Seemed fitting. 6 months later, as we plan our first trip together to Montreal to meet his family, I still tease Elliot about his line-cutting scheme. He insists it was fate, not strategy, that brought us together. Maybe he's right. After all, in a festival of thousands, what were the chances that he would tap my shoulder, that I would hold his place, that he would return with not just tickets but a kiss that would change everything? Sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin in the most ordinary places, like waiting in line for ice cream on a summer day when you least expect your life to change. And while I can't say for certain what the future holds for Elliot and me, I know that I'll never again underestimate the potential of a simple request. "Would you mind holding my place in line?" Total_char_count. 17,893.